Jason has been a speaker many times, but he doesn't live here. He lives in Utah. He created a job search tool called Jibber Jobber. Created it in 2006 during what he described as a failure of a job search. Since starting Jibber Jobber in 2006, he has also authored 3 books. He has spoken professionally around the world. He has been a prolific blogger in the job search and career space. He is passionate about career management and has worked since 2006 to help others find their career passion. Let's give a very warm Texas welcome to Jason Alba.
I am passionate about career management. And so first, before I start, there's a few things I wanted to just say. I've forgotten half of what I wanted to say already. This is a new presentation. I did it 2 days ago for the first time, so which means I made it up 3 days ago at night. And I hope it's good. I hope it's interesting. I hope it's inspiring. But it's been kind of the culmination of a lot of years of thinking and working on this. So Career Management 2.0 is a presentation that I started probably 10 or so years ago when I started getting on the road and speaking at job clubs across the U.S. So anyways, Career Management 2.0 is a presentation I gave yesterday at a job club here in Austin, and it's one of my most favorite messages that I've ever given because it is the heart of what I think we need to do with career management. And for the first few years that I gave that, I kept thinking, all right, how do I update this? How do I make it better? How do I polish this? And I never could. I never got to the point where I was like, well, I need to add this idea or this principle or change this story because it just felt right to me. Or I just wasn't smart enough to figure out how to make it any better, one or the other. But I finally, a little while ago, figured out what the next version of that presentation is. And so here we have Career Management 3.0. I did bring my kids today. This is Bring Your Kids to Work Day for my company, Jibber Jobber. So I have Taylor, who's 15, and Daniel, who is 10, 2 of my favorite kids. Actually, my wife sends them along just to be like, okay, do you really have a job? Like, do you really go to job clubs and talk? Or are you just like hanging out at a restaurant this morning? So anyways, Taylor and Daniel have some blue tickets. I'm guessing most people here don't have them, but we should just start passing those around. We're going to do a drawing in a few minutes, and then we'll do a drawing a little bit later. So I'm going to start off with a quick story. Last year, in the early part of the year, I needed to get a job. I needed a change of scenery. I was interested in making more money. I got my business to a point where it wasn't really a 40 or a 50-hour job anymore. It was when I first started my company, but I got to the point where I had a lot of extra time, and I started to just feel kind of stale. My personal growth had really slowed down, and I was ready to try something out. So I got a dream job. It was amazing, and how it happened was an interesting story, which we don't have time for. It was an amazing job until it wasn't amazing. I don't know if you guys ever had that, where you like start this awesome job, and I don't know if it's like honeymoon phase or what the problem is, but eventually it all wore off. My boss actually quit to go start his own company, and then the program that he was spearheading got canceled, and I was the program manager. And so I started my job in February. And in October, I'm sitting across the desk from his boss, before he quit, who became my boss, the chief marketing officer, and she says, you know, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. This is the end. Your last day is on November 30th. And as she was talking about this, I thought, well, this sucks. I mean, there's no two ways about that. I wasn't excited about that. But I had an awesome epiphany. Now, let me pause, and I'm going to go back 13 and a half years earlier when I lost my job. I was general manager of a software company, and it was a little company, and I inherited the position, and there was a whole lot of problems with the organization, And my job was to turn everything around and fix a lot of problems. And that didn't happen soon enough. And so a committee of people laid me off. And not one person would be brave enough to do it. So they made this committee decision. And I call it a committee of chickens. I'm a little worried about this presentation because usually my stuff doesn't go on YouTube, but they'll probably never watch this unless they're in transition one day and they're like, hey, wait, I think he's talking about me. So what happened back in 2006 was that a committee took away 100% of my income. And I didn't understand that all through my life, preparing to have a career and get a job, that I was going to give 100% control of my income to other people. And I think when you phrase it that way, it sounds kind of dumb. We're smarter than that. We're smart people in this room. Why are we giving 100% control of our income to somebody else? Somebody who might have issues, or somebody who might be in a bad mood one day, right? But we do that. So anyways, I started Jibber Jobber a few months later. And my goal when I started was, I want to make $100 a month. So that if and when when I get laid off again, they're not going to have control to take away 100% of my income. I will at least maintain $100 a month and kind of stick it to them. Couldn't do anything with $100 a month, but I still wanted to not give them 100% control. So here I am sitting in the office of the CMO as she's letting me go. Anybody here ever let anybody go? It's not fun. You don't end that meeting and you're like, yes, that was awesome, right? I mean, you feel kind of like a horrible human being if you have a heart. And so I could tell she felt bad as she was having this conversation with me, but I kept thinking, you don't represent even 50% of my income. You're taking away this job, and it was a great job, and I loved the job, and I loved what I was working on, and I loved the people that I was working with, but you are not taking away not even 50% of my income. And it was awesome. And that is why I came up with this presentation called Career Management 3.0. Anytime. All right, so just real quick on Pluralsight, I have 32 courses that are live right now. I'm working on my next one when I get back in town. I handpicked 6 courses. This is all free, right? You don't even put your credit card in when you sign up for Pluralsight through the sticker. I handpicked 6 courses that I recommend for job seekers. So and actually in my presentations, especially if I have more than an hour, then I'll go deeper into some of these things. But you're going to get an hour to an hour and a half of depth on these certain topics. So the first one is on developing a killer personal brand. I'm really, really big, right? I'm big on personal branding because when I got let go in 2006, I didn't have a brand. I didn't have a network, I didn't have a brand, I'm very passionate about us defining and sharing what our brand is instead of the brand being put on us because of stereotypes. Does anybody in here feel like they're facing discrimination in one way or another? It's no fun. It is no fun, but there's ways to get around it. Let me tell a quick story. So one of my favorite stories about an older gentleman who was facing age discrimination. He was a CIO level, very competent, his skills were very broad and deep. Super guy. But he had white hair. And every time he went into a situation, whether it was networking or interview or whatever, he felt like that white hair was keeping him out of moving forward. I don't know if anybody in here has had that situation or felt that way, but most everywhere I go across the country, age discrimination is one of the top issues. So here's this guy who, and actually just last year I was looking at this job opportunity and I applied for a certain job. And I looked at the company picture, like, hey, we're going to do an annual company picture. So everybody's standing out in front of the building. And it looked like everybody was barely out of high school, maybe barely out of college. And I thought, yeah, I'm not going to make it in that. They want a 20-something-year-old, right? So we face age discrimination and other types of discrimination. So what this guy did, he's out of Houston. His name is Mike, and he started writing a blog. And on his blog, he wrote blog posts that helped you understand his breadth, right? So as a CIO, you're dealing with a lot of things. You're dealing with operational things and technology decisions and strategy and management and executive. Like there's a lot of breadth in his role, right? And then through his blog, he was able to take any of those parts of his breadth and drill down on them. Hey, here's a situation in the executive committee that we recently had. And I mean, you have to use discretion when you're doing this. Usually I'm rated number 1, but now I'm 14. So what he did was he had this breadth and depth that he was able to start communicating through these individual blog posts. Now, if you think about it, you are not, I don't know if anybody here feels it this way, but in my resume, I was not able to communicate my breadth and my depth. Because the resume is like this little specific thing, and I was like, but I want to write so much more about myself. I want to communicate these other things. Well, that's not appropriate for a resume. And then you go to an interview and you have about 45 minutes to communicate the best of you, and you walk out and you're like, oh, I should have talked about this, or I should have gone deeper on that, right? So the blog becomes a supplemental tool that you really can share your breadth and depth. He actually got picked up by, I think it was Forbes magazine, to start writing about CIO and strategy, technology strategy on CIO. And because of his writing, his white hair didn't matter anymore. And he landed an amazing job. But he had to break out of that discrimination and use personal branding tactics to get out of it. All right, so the next course that I handpicked was informational interviews. Is anybody in here doing informational interviews? I'll give you my Jason Alba line. If I were to start a job search today, I would spend 95% of my time doing informational interviews. I think it's kind of scary because it's a lot less scary to go on job boards and apply and to go onto LinkedIn and, network or whatever. But if I were anxious to get a job and turn on my income so I could pay my bills, I would spend almost all of my time on informational interviews. Have you ever heard the idea that you're networking into a company? You do that through informational interviews. Have you ever heard that you should follow up? That's a part of the informational interview strategy.
What's your definition of information interview?
So I would love to talk for like 3 hours on informational interviews, but I don't have enough time because they're going to kick me out here. And I'm even going to push the time a little bit until Kathy, she's going to tackle me off the stage in a little bit. But very quickly, an informational interview is a meeting, a conversation between two peers and colleagues. Okay? They're very purposeful. When you're in an informational interview, you have a few very specific things that you're after. One of which, towards the end, is who else should I talk to? And so an informational interview should spawn some referrals, some introductions to more informational interviews, which should spawn some more conversations. And I'd say, by the way, don't ever ask for an informational interview, because if you're calling somebody on the phone, let's say you had a job right now and you're calling someone, you're like, hey, we need to talk shop. I got some questions about what just happened in the industry, at your company, or the role, or whatever. You never call and say, can I have an informational interview? It's just too, right? So, but in the industry, that's just what it's most known as. But in this course, I think it's about 90 minutes I walk through all of it. The next one is working with different personalities. I think a lot of times in the job search, we beat ourselves up because because we're unemployed and we kind of feel like we're failures right now. That's how I felt for a long time. And then when we have conversations with people, sometimes they turn us off and they're like, they act a little wrong. We don't feel like we have it, like they treat us without dignity, right? And what I've learned is it's not that they hate us or that they don't think that they think lower of us. It really is that they have a certain personality that maybe they're just doing a lot of thinking, but we're taking it the wrong way. So in this course, I talk a lot about the differences in personalities and how working with different personalities, how you should communicate with people with different personalities, which is a great thing to understand before you walk into an interview. Becoming a better listener. As a job seeker, a lot of times we have so much heaviness on our mind that we're kind of thinking ahead. We're trying to figure out how to get that next job, and we're not in the moment. So in this course, I learned a lot about active listening, which I had never really heard about before. Okay, and then I have 2 courses on LinkedIn. One is to optimize your LinkedIn profile, and the other is on developing LinkedIn proactive strategies. So those are 6 of my 32 courses. Notice up at the top it says X 3 days. So every time you watch a Jason Alba course on Pluralsight, you go back into Jibber and there's a place where you can report that you watched my course, any of my courses, and we'll upgrade you on Jibber for 3 more days. And so some people do that like for the whole 30 days. They watch enough courses over and over that they get a full year of premium. Okay, or you can search on Alba, and I'm the only Alba there. Okay, I came out with a new program. Jibber is cool. Back in 06, it was really cool. There was nothing like it. Hunter wasn't around, and there's been about 20 competitors since 2006. Most of them have gone away because they haven't figured out how to actually make money. But this, I think, is way cooler. I call it Project Hope because in my job search, I had 3 problems. The first problem was I felt lonely. I felt alone. Everybody around me had a purpose, they had a job, they were contributing to society, and I couldn't hardly do anything. No, I couldn't even beg my way into an interview. And I felt like people didn't understand me. I'd go to church sometimes and people would walk up with printouts of jobs and they'd hand them to me and like, hey, I found some jobs online. And I'm like, what do you think I do all day long? You know? I mean, holy cow. And not only that, but why are you giving me a printout? This is 2006. Like, we're in the modern ages, you know? And anyways, people just didn't understand what my situation was. I was the token unemployed person, and it was no fun. I'm not a depressed person, but I went into a depression. And I didn't understand it until afterwards, and I can look back on it. But that depression had a big impact on what I was doing and my effectiveness in the job search and in networking. And I remember laying in bed in the mornings. I don't know if you relate to this, but I'd lay in the bed in the morning and I'm like, okay, well, today I'm going to do the same stuff that I've been doing for the last 2 months that's got me nowhere. But it's a numbers game, so I'll put my numbers in. And man, this sucks, you know? The third thing was related to that. I was spinning my wheels. I was doing the wrong things. I don't know if anybody in here feels like you're doing stuff, but you're getting nowhere. And for the last 13 years, I've been networking with career professionals and resume writers, and I've been speaking at these career conferences and going to lunch and dinner with these people and listening to programs. And I've heard of a lot of programs, and there's a lot of things that are awesome. But let me go back to my 95% number. If I were to start a job today, it would be centered around informational interviews. So I had this business coach a number of years ago, and he had a program. And there was a lot of elements of this program, but one of the elements was that every day you do 3 what he calls high-value activities. So 3 things, and his focus was on marketing small businesses. How does a small business go from making this much money to growing, right, succeeding financially? And so he said, I don't care what you do the rest of the day, but you identify 3 high-value activities that you're going to focus on. So as a job seeker, going through your email is not a high-value activity. Getting to inbox 0 is not a high-value activity. Applying to jobs online might not be a high-value activity, right? And so what I did was I took his model and his system to help companies grow, and then I took what I thought were high-value activities that job seekers need to implement and put those 2 together and made a 6-week program. So here I call it Project Hope, even though I can't keep that name because there's already a Project Hope organization. But for now, I'll call it Project Hope. So here's the premise. It's a very simple app, right? On Monday, we're launching on web. By the end of the month, we should have a mobile app. But basically, you have a recording. The first day is 9 minutes. We get it to a point where you're like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. And I walk through every day and train you and give you 3 high-value activities. Eventually, well, from day 1, let me see. From day one, you're not doing informational interviews. I think on day 2, you're doing informational interviews. You're calling friends or family. It's a safe conversation. You don't quite know what you're doing yet, right? But you're calling someone safe. And then the next day, you're going to call someone safe. And the next day, you're going to call someone safe. But by week 2 or 3 or 4, you're calling someone who is in your industry or target company or profession. And it's scary, you guys. I know it's scary. As a job seeker, you have 2 choices. It's like I could email somebody or I could pick up the phone. And in that situation, the phone starts to weigh 500 pounds, right? You're like, I'm going to go email somebody, right? I know that, or at least that's how it is for me. I'm not a salesperson. The other element of it is that I list your 3 high-value activities, and then at the end of every day, did you complete these 3 high-value activities? So if you want the program, get the program, but if you don't want the program, make up your own. My ask of you is to please figure out what your own 3 high-value activities are, and then track that. Track and see whether you're actually doing it or not. All right, so there's an alpha testing group. I had about 15 or 20 people that have been testing this program, and this guy Rob sent me an email a couple weeks ago. He said, the key advantage to your 9-minute, the first one, is that it got me free from analysis paralysis. Anybody there? I remember when I couldn't start my job search until I had my resume. It took me 2 weeks to get a resume. That's analysis paralysis right there. You do not need to have a resume to start a job search, okay? You do not need to have all these things lined up and done in order to pick up a phone and say, hey, can we have a conversation? Okay, please don't get stuck on that. That has had me stuck for some time. I was under the impression I had to read every job search book in my library. Anybody feel that way? When I started my job search, I didn't want to read all the stuff. I didn't want to be an expert on a job search. I just wanted a job, right? Before getting started with my actual systematic job search, you told me to get started, and I did. So Rob sends me emails about every 2 or 3 days. He's the alpha tester who sends me the most feedback. Last night, he made my entire week. He sent me this. Yesterday, my second voicemail request for an informational interview, because this program focuses on that, resulted in an immediate callback, a 40-minute conversation, and an invitation for me to interview in person with a consulting firm in 2 weeks. This is a guy who, before he started this alpha program, was sitting around for months applying online and getting nowhere. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now. This is not because of Jason Alba. This is because he got on the phone and asked somebody for a meeting. He actually left a voicemail. If you're afraid of that first call to invite somebody, then do it at 6 in the morning when they're not there and it goes to voicemail. Really. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Isn't that awesome, though? He got unstuck because I prompted him and said, get on the phone and invite somebody. Okay, so with that introduction, we're going to do a very quick review of what I call Career Management 2.0. Every bit of what we talk about in Career Management 2.0 applies to this bigger concept of 3.0. All right, so Jibber Jobber focuses on 5 things. We have contacts, which should be at the heart of your job search. The heart of my failed job search was jobs. Applying online for jobs. That's where I was spinning wheels. And I should have had contacts be the center of my job search. The next one is target companies. Who in the room has a list of target companies? Wow. Okay, everybody who didn't raise their hand, shame on you. Let me change your mind about target companies. And here's why target companies, one of the reasons why target companies are so powerful. And I could go for 3 hours, so I hesitate. This is a tangent, but it's important. I feel like it's important to share this. Does anybody in here hear the question, how can I help you in your job search? Sorry, how's your job search going? How's your job search going? How do you guys answer? Yeah. Like, there's what you think in your mind, which is like, and then you say something like, it's all right, it's going all right. And you're really thinking like, I hate this question, that you even have to ask me this question means something is not going right. So what I want you to do is translate this question in your mind they're not saying, how's your job search going? They're saying, how can I help you in your job search? Okay? Even if they're not really asking that, I still want you to interpret that question. They're asking you, how can I help you? And if your answer is, it's going all right, then you're not helping them help you. They want to help you. They're asking how they can help you. So here's how I would answer that. You might want to write this down. This is one of the coolest things. I come up with a really cool thing every 18 months. And this is one of them. This was a few years back. It's going all right, or fine, or good, or whatever, right? Whatever your answer is. And then you say this, because you want to help them help you. You say, I'm looking for an introduction at one of my target companies. Do you know anyone who works at company A, B, or C? Now notice what I'm saying. I'm not saying, will you introduce me to somebody? Or do you know somebody who's hiring? Or do you know someone who works in the right department? I'm asking a yes or no question. And our lizard brains answer that right away. Oh, do I know someone who works at Google, Facebook, or eBay? Yes or no? That's all we're asking, okay? And if they do know someone, then we'll have the conversation to hopefully get an introduction and stuff like that. But what I want you to do is have that list of target companies on your mind so that when someone says, how's your job search going, you can immediately come back with, it's going great, it's going well. Do you know anyone who works at company A, B, or C? And if they ask you that a week later, the same question, then ask them for 3 other target, whether they know someone at 3 other target companies, okay? But having those on the tip of your mind is important. All right, so in Jibber Jobber, we're obviously tracking jobs, because that's really what this is all about. It shouldn't be your central focus, but we definitely want to know which version of which resume we sent to who at what company, and when do we need to follow up. And if you're trying to track that on a spreadsheet, then you're probably frustrated. I was frustrated. We're tracking the conversations. What I found, has anybody in here ever used a CRM in their jobs, like Salesforce or something like that? What I found in Jibber Jobber is the more details I put into the system, the less I regret it later. I've gone into my system and looked at somebody's record and looked at, I know I had this conversation or lunch or something with them, a few months ago, but I can't remember what we talked about. And I go in Jibber Jobber and I look at it and I'm like, had lunch, it was great. And I'm like, that's not enough information for me to act on right now. And you know what? When I had lunch, it was great. And we had an awesome conversation. And I thought, I'm never going to forget this. And like a week later, I forgot that we even had lunch, much less what we talked about, right? Because between that lunch and then a week later, I had applied to a bunch of places and had a bunch of new business cards and stuff like that. And then the 5th one is reminders. I'll never forget when I was talking to somebody about, I went to a job club and he came up to me and he said, hey, I've been using Jibber Jobber for a while. I love it. Jibber Jobber is my, and I was like, what is it? How do you describe Jibber Jobber? Because I don't even know how to describe it. He says, Jibber Jobber is my follow-up tool. And I thought that was awesome because Keith Ferrazzi, who wrote the book Never Eat Alone, on a blog post, he said, if you want to be better than 95% of your competition, all you have to do is, because people aren't doing it, right? You've heard this whole thing like send handwritten thank you cards. I don't disagree with that. I actually went to Walmart and I got like these super cheap and generic 25 handwritten, or not handwritten, but thank you cards, and I have them in my desk, and sometimes I actually put those in the mail. You will stand out because people don't do that, but you don't have to go to that extreme. A follow-up can simply be a text or an email or a phone call or tagging somebody on LinkedIn. Or, it depends on who you are and who they are and where they'll see you, but there are things you can do to follow up that will make you better than 95% of your competition. I think one of the reasons why is because we talk ourselves out of inconveniencing those people, right? Like, well, I don't want to call them now because it might be dinner time. Well, they might be really busy with this. Well, and we talk ourselves out of it, and then they never hear from us again. All right, so here's an example of a contact in JibberJobber. Mostly what I do is I put a name and an email address, but as I get to know the person, then I start putting more information, even down to their spouse's name or any personal information that will help me with that relationship. One of the most powerful parts is tags. This helps me slice and dice my data so I can go out later and say, I want to send a newsletter or an email to all the recruiters that I've networked into. I want to send an email to all the people from this industry or all the people from this association or whatever. However, I have a tag that says family. I should do one for like family that I like and then the rest of the family so I can send the right messages to the right people. Okay, so here's an example of a log entry, and you can see this column that I don't have here. This is a note that I made about staying with my aunt on this trip. We stopped in Amarillo, and I could have a follow-up date here. One of the most powerful parts of JibberJobber is that you can get your information, contacts companies, jobs, log entries, and reminders into the system by sending an email. So in this example, I'm sending an email to Donna, who's a resume writer, and I'm blind carbon copying JibberJobber. She doesn't know this is happening, but this email is going to JibberJobber, finding her contact record and putting the content of the email into a log entry. You don't have to do duplicate entry, which is a pain, right? The other thing we can do is I put this in white font, so she never sees this in her email, but this right here tells me to follow up in a week. And JibberJobber will send me messages on email or text or whatever. One of the biggest problems I had for my spreadsheet was following up because my spreadsheet got really big and out of hand and weird, and I started adding columns here and tabs there. It just got messy. This is how I was keeping track of those follow-up opportunities. All right, I think this is the last, let me see real quick. Yeah, this is the last concept. So here's a line that I learned from a career coach, and this blew me away because it really helped me understand why I was getting nowhere in my job search. What she said was, you find your leads, your job leads, from your third and fourth degree contacts, not your first and second degree contacts. Anybody ever heard that? Does it make sense? That's why I was getting nowhere, because I was meeting a lot of first degree people. Think about it. Hey mom, do you have a job for me yet? Right? She's my first degree contact. A lot of the people that you know that are first degree contacts might not have an opportunity for you. So whether it's true or not that you'll find your leads from your third and fourth and fifth degree contacts rather than your first and second, it helped me start to think, you know what, I'm not doing well. I'm meeting people, but I'm not saying, who do you know? Who should I talk to? And if you think about it in an informational interview, I feel like this is kind of an auction, right? In an informational interview, you're meeting somebody and you're asking for an introduction to someone else. And then after you have that meeting, you're asking for an introduction and you're drilling deeper and deeper and you're getting closer to someone who's in your profession, industry, target company, etc. Right? That's happening not because you come to a network meeting and meet someone who happens to be the right person. It happens because you meet someone and say, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Who do you know that I should talk to? And you're getting closer and closer. As you're getting closer and closer, you're getting deeper and deeper into your network. So in JibberJobber, we have this function where you go in and you add a contact and you say, I know this person because they were introduced to me by this person. And then we will give you a visualization of how deep your network is. If I were your coach and you came to me and showed me that your whole network was first degree contacts, I would say, you know what, you're doing a great job meeting people. Now let's stop meeting new people, go to the people that are already on your list and having the right conversations. Who do you know? Who can you introduce me to? All right, in JibberJobber there are videos, I call them getting started videos, and they're little 2 to 5 minute videos to show you how to set up your email to log and how to do this and how to do that and how to do all this stuff. If you ever get stuck on anything, because I think that the job search is very frustrating, I don't want you to be frustrated in my software, so just go to the contact us and say, I don't understand this, I need help, help me out, and we'll point you in the right direction. Okay, so in Career Management 2.0, I talk about this idea that there's no job security. Even though in the 1900s, when I was their age, people would say, okay, here's how you have job security. You go to school, you get a degree, you make your boss look good, you arrive early and stay late, you keep your nose clean, you do all these right things, and then you'll have job security, right? Does anybody believe that anymore? Tell you what, my kids don't believe it. Taylor's heard this presentation in one version or another 5 times this week, and she knows there's no such thing as job security. What I realized one day was that I don't care about job security. You know what I really want? Morally, legally, and ethically, I want income security. My income does not have to come from one place. I don't need to get one check every other week, right? Maybe I have 10 different places that create income security for me. And that's really what the premise of this new presentation 3.0 is about. Income security is a subset of career management. So how do we get income security? Well, there's 3 things that I talk about, and this is my 2.0 presentation. One is your brand. I believe firmly that everybody has a personal brand. Now, pop quiz. Anybody in here not have a personal brand? Usually, because I usually don't preface it by saying that everybody has one. So usually like 90% of the people raise their hand. Like, you don't have one?
No.
Okay, Emmett, if you had a personal brand, what would it be?
I'll get back to you.
All right, but see, I don't have time. Kathy's only given me a little bit of time. So if you had one right now, what would it be?
Friendly salesperson.
Okay, I like it. That sounds like a personal brand to me. Would other people agree with that? Okay. So my argument is that we all have a brand. It's either something that we define and we drive and we communicate and other people communicate about us, or it's inherited, like I talked about before with the discrimination and stuff like that. I want you to define and own your personal brand, okay? The second part is growing your network. There's a spectrum. This was back in the olden days on LinkedIn where they're like, only connect with people you know and trust and that you would sit down and have coffee with. And then there's the other people, they used to call themselves lions, LinkedIn open networkers, and they're like, put a mirror under their nose, and if there's fog, I want to connect with you because I don't care about anything except that you're alive, maybe. What I want you to do as a job seeker is proactively grow your network with the right people. Okay, I'm going to define that. I think the right people are people in your space. Your space consists of 3 things. I've mentioned it a few times already. Your space is your profession. So think job title, the job title you're after, and then job titles that would be above you that you would report to, and job titles that might report to you or that you would work with. Okay? So profession, industry, and geography. As we work on our informational interviews, remember I said at the beginning of my program, you're calling, friends and family, the safe people. They're probably not in your profession or industry, and maybe not in your geography. But by the end of the program, you're calling people who are in your profession and industry and geography. Can you imagine having informational interviews with those people? That's who you want to be talking with right now. The third part of career management is actually nurturing relationships. I'm an introvert, which my wife argues still to this day. She's like, you're not an introvert. And I'm like, yeah, I am an introvert. So maybe we should just compromise and I'll take her word for it and I'm not an introvert. But I still think I'm an introvert. I had to read a book to understand that introverts can network too. Because there's this idea that networking means going to meetings like this and getting 10 or 12 new business cards and like all this stuff that I felt very uncomfortable about. And I didn't understand that networking was actually okay to have a one-on-one conversation at a coffee shop and that still counted. Like that was effective. That was real and good networking. This is the first book that I read slow and fast at the same time. I would absorb it and think about it, but I couldn't wait to get to the next concept. This was a great book. The other book I recommend is called Brag. This is awesome. In our society, we are trained that we are not allowed to talk about ourselves, right? You're bragging about yourself, stop bragging about yourself. And then we come to a meeting like this and they're like, would you please take the microphone and brag about yourselves? And it's like, I don't like this. I don't know what to say, right? These are the two books that changed the way that I thought about what a job search is and career management. All right, LinkedIn is a tool. It is a tool. It's not your silver bullet. It's not necessarily going to be the place where you find your job. It might be, but it's a tool, and it's a great tool. It's just not the only tool. Okay, so don't depend too much on this. So other tools that I want to talk about real quick. We talked about LinkedIn, Jibber Jobber, and then this structured system that you'll do daily, which for me I call it Project Hope. You guys can make up your own. A job search newsletter. In a job search newsletter, I talk about having 3 things, just 3 things. Please don't talk about family issues or any personal issues or things that are going to make me think, I want to help you, but you're not ready for my help yet, right? So the 3 things that I want to see in your job search newsletter, which is an email that you would send weekly, is here are the places that I've applied to this last week. Tell me, Greg, what are you looking for? What kind of job are you looking for?
Financial.
Where would you like to work? One company.
I could be a solo practitioner.
Okay. Give me just a company name. Play along.
Okay. National Western Life Insurance.
Okay, so I meet Greg and we have a conversation and somehow that's all he gives me. He's like, yeah, I actually am looking, or let me rephrase it. I interviewed for a financial position at National Western Life Insurance. Did I get that right? And so for the rest of the week, and then weeks, and then months, as I see him and think about him, I'm like, I wonder if he ever got that one job at that one company, but I don't realize that there's other places that he's interested in, or other things that he's interested in, even being a consultant. And so in your job search newsletter, every week as you start saying, here are the other places I've been interested in this week, I start to think, oh, I thought Greg only wanted to work here. I didn't realize that he was interested in these other places. In this newsletter, you're helping me understand and broaden my vision of what you're looking for and how I can help you. The other, yes. Wait, does this count as part of my 60 minutes? Okay, you can
Yes, it does, but take all the time. All right, to whom do you send out this newsletter?
Yeah,
Is it
great
every
question.
single person that you've ever
Excellent question.
coffeed with?
I would use discretion and send out the newsletter to certain people. If anybody says, how's your job search going? They might end up on your newsletter, right? The person you just interviewed last week, don't put them on your newsletter yet. Maybe in a month or so. But just use discretion as people who you think will want to or be able to help you in your job search. Okay, so the first thing in your newsletter is where I've applied. The second thing, same reason, is here are the titles that I've applied to. Because I'm thinking that Greg, just from our brief conversation, wants to be a financial advisor, but I don't understand that there's 2 or 3 other things that he's very well capable of doing, right? But I pigeonholed him with this one thing. So as we send our newsletter out and say, here are a couple other titles that I'm interested in or have interviewed for or whatever, then I start to think, oh, I didn't know that about Greg, but I know someone who's in that space that I can make an introduction to. Okay? The third one is similar to the question of how is your job search going. It's a call to action, and it's going to be, I'm looking for an introduction at one of these target companies. Do you know anyone you can introduce me to at company A, B, or C? That's your call to action. Okay? And I'm sorry that we're going really fast through this, but you are getting like the condensed version of just the awesomest stuff without all the funny stories. All right, does anybody in here not have an accountability partner? I recommend that you have an accountability partner. I did not have an accountability partner, and it was horrible. Scott?
Does my wife count?
Yeah, great question. I strongly encourage you, and I usually have this on my slides, and I almost put it here, it should not be a spouse. because the lines are too close. I have coaching friends who, when their spouse loses their job, they call up one of their colleagues and say, please coach my husband or wife because I can't do it. It's just too close. Okay? Great question. It's like I planted that question, but I did it. Go ahead.
What about unemployment personnel? They count, yeah.
As long as you're being accountable to someone, and really, when I talk about an accountability partner, one of the most important elements of that is they should be able to say, hey, what are you doing, and are you actually doing it? Like, are you doing the right things, and are you really doing it? And that's part of the reason why in Project Hope we have that yes or no button, where every day you're actually reporting back and saying yes or no, and we're trending now, we're tracking now. Okay, the last one is informational interviews, which we talked about, and you can go watch that course on Pluralsight at no cost. I think I mentioned this, but when you go sign up from the sticker, the number on the sticker, on the page you sign up, you don't put your credit card number in. Okay, so there is no bait and switch on this Pluralsight thing, but you get full access to all the courses. Also, one of my colleagues, his name is Casey Ayers, I think, Ayers, and he has a whole course on PMP certification. So if you want to get a PMP, you could take all of his courses to prep for it. And he's working right now on a business analyst certification path. And it is awesome stuff. There's a ton of stuff in Pluralsight. All right, whew, that was a good introduction. Now we can get into the presentation. We're going to like 2 o'clock, right? Okay, we'll move out to where Indeed is afterwards if we can move the projector. I'm kidding. We're not going to. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is income streams. And let me take you back to my example back in October when I got let go, and I'm thinking, okay, not a problem. Because in 2006 when I got let go, one of the things on my mind was, how am I going to tell my wife that her husband just lost everything? Like, we didn't lose our assets, but I lost the income to make the payments on the assets, right? This time in 2018, when I got let go, I was like, cool, no problem. And I go home, and I'm, okay, we're going to get a little personal here. I had hernia surgery last fall, and right here. And so I go home that day, and I'm standing like this. My wife's in the TV room, and I'm just walk up like this, and I'm like, honey, you know how sometimes life throws weird things at you? And she's seeing me like this, and she's like, oh my gosh, you have another hernia, or you're bleeding out or something. And I said, well, I lost my job. It's official. And it was not a big deal like it was back in 2006. And it was so awesome because they didn't turn it all off. They turned off what they could, but I had other things going on. This is my Twitter background. It took me years to figure out what I was going to put on LinkedIn and Twitter as my header, because there's all these things I could have put, but I'm so passionate about developing income streams that I finally settled on a stream. And this is the message that I want you to take home today. I want you to think about, how can I create income streams so that I never give people, anybody, control over 100% of my income. All right, so Taylor's 15, and as we were driving out here, everybody was asleep in the back, and we were in the front, and we had hours. It's a long drive from Utah. And she says, Dad, what's an entrepreneur? Tell me everything about entrepreneurship. And I was like, okay, well, we have hours. We could actually have this conversation. So I thought, what is an entrepreneur? Is it the 4 or 5 people that sit on the Shark Tank? Are they entrepreneurs? Yeah, they have been, right? What about the people who are in front of them pitching their stuff? Are they entrepreneurs? Yeah, sure. What about that kid who mows lawns? That was me back in the 1900s. I remember pushing my lawnmower around for $5. Remember when you could mow a lawn and make $5? That was good money too. Or the girl who has a lemonade stand, trying to not get arrested for the lemonade stand, right? Oh, the world we live in today. I actually read back home in Utah, somebody had, this 11-year-old kid was holding up a sign on the street, and it said, ice cold beer, and he had a cooler right next to him. Did you see that? Wasn't that adorable? And the cops came because the neighbors called this 11-year-old peddling beer, right? And then when they got close enough, they saw it said root right above the beer. And of course, you know the cops bought root beer, right? What about us? Are we entrepreneurs? Raise your hand if you're not an entrepreneur. Okay, so maybe you think you're not an entrepreneur, but I think that you are, and here's why. An entrepreneur, I told her, is someone who comes up with products or services, okay? And then you find someone who has a need or a desire for your products and services, and they have money. The money part's kind of important in this whole entrepreneurial model. That's it. You come up with a product or service, and then you somehow figure out where the market is, and there's a connection between your stuff and their need, okay? Here's why I think you're an entrepreneur. We are selling our time and our expertise to a company. It meets this right here. We have products or services that we're selling to a company. So for all the people who don't want to be entrepreneurs out there, I'm sorry, but life didn't turn out the way you wanted, and you are an entrepreneur. Most of us in our careers have figured out one income stream, and that's what we focus on. That's kind of what the model has been for decades and decades, right? What I want to do is think about how we can change that. So entrepreneurs are people who simply recognize opportunities. A number of years ago, when President Obama came out with the ACA, there was a lot of bickering. I don't know if it happened here in Texas, but everywhere around the country, I heard a lot of stuff. And this group was like, we love it, and we hate it. And I'm sitting here thinking, where are the opportunities? And I know people and companies that sprung out of nowhere. Like, can you imagine if you understood healthcare, right? Let's say a year before Obamacare came out. You really understood healthcare because that was your job. And then Obamacare came out and nobody understands healthcare. You now could have been a high-earning consultant helping companies unravel it and understand what their strategy was going to be. There are opportunities everywhere. That's one of hundreds of examples. One of the things that an entrepreneur wants to do is reduce income risk. What's another way that we reduce income risk or money risk? And how do we do that in investments? Most financial planners are like, don't buy a stock, buy mutual funds because they're diversified. Why? Because there's multiple. That's what we're doing with multiple streams of income. Okay, a few things I've learned that I love about business and entrepreneurship. When you think about your products or services, you need to think about the vitamin and pill concept. Has anybody heard of this concept? This was one of the most powerful and a little bit sad things that I learned because I ended up on the vitamin side. When you have a headache, what do you take? You take a pill. You take the medicine. Take this problem away soon. You don't sit there and drink kale smoothies and like, oh, in a week I'm going to feel so good, right? I'm not saying that selling vitamins is bad and selling pills is better. What I am saying is you should understand what your products or services are. The pill is easier to sell in certain situations. And I learned that Jibber Jobber is not a pill. Jibber Jobber is a vitamin. Jibber Jabber is part of a long-term process to solidify your career management. And that's when I was like, what the heck am I doing? I'm in the wrong business. Again, it's not that one's better or worse, it's that you need to understand the difference because whatever you're selling, a vitamin or a pill, will help you understand your marketing strategy. All right, here's another thing. I started Jibber Jabber in May of 2006. There was a guy at a job club that I went to like this. He started his own business the same month. The first month he was out, he made enough money to pay all his bills and replace his income. It took me years before I replaced my income because I made a product. And I thought I was better than him because later on I would have something I could sell and something that would scale and all this stuff. But he never went into a financial deficit because he was doing services. So let's just talk real quick about that. I had to invest a ton in creating. Some people are like, oh, I want to make an app that'll do this. Great. But it might be a year out before your app actually gets monetized. You'll make like 10 bucks because 3 people will buy it. You're delaying your income on the product side because you got to develop. Companies can do this because they have money coming in from other things where they can go spend money on R&D. But if it's your only thing, make sure you have income coming in. On the upside, there is a possibility for me to sell Jibber Jobber as a product to a company like Indeed, whereas it's harder to sell a one-person consulting firm, right? On the services side, you can earn money right now. If I were to go back to 2006 and start over, I would try and consult for 1 or 2 hours a day, just to have the cash flow coming in while I built my product. On the services side, you're taking your expertise that you've spent years or decades building, and you can capitalize on that right now. You're also selling your time, which a lot of people hate doing. When I go talk at career conferences with resume writers and coaches, one of the things I hear the most from these people who can make a lot of money selling their time and expertise is, I want to make money while I sleep. I want to make money because I made a product and it sells itself and I don't have to deliver on it. And I thought, man, if you can make money while you sleep, then the strategy there is to just sleep more. Really. So I'm not going to say that one's better than the other, but I want you to go into this with eyes wide open. All right, so here's some ideas. Walking dogs. This is in my book, 51 Alternatives to Real Dogs. Does anybody here want to go walk dogs? Does anybody in here, did you go to school and you're like, I want to learn how to walk dogs. I'll take 4 years of classes to walk dogs. There's a lady that I interviewed. I can't remember if she made $5,000 a month or $6,000 a month, but she made good money walking dogs, right? Why don't we do that? It's good money. I think part of the reason why is because you don't want to go to a party and what do you do? Oh, I walk dogs. And you're like, I thought so, you know? Cleaning or organized houses. Taylor is my organizer. When she gets really upset, she'll go into the kitchen and like an hour later, everything's amazing, right? Who is that lady, Marie Kondo or whatever?
She sells her services.
She sparks joy. I could totally see her going to people's houses and cleaning their laundry room or their master closet or their kitchen or whatever. And I'll tell you what, if you think that's easy stuff, there are people out there who don't think it's easy and they'll pay money to get rid of their problem. Consulting is an easy one. It's a quick and easy one that a lot of professionals with professional experience, I'll tell you what, you can make a lot of money consulting. Sales. So I was in Dallas and this guy came up to me and he was a sales professional and I said, usually when I say this, I get this response like, no way, I would never do that. I say, would you ever be interested in a commission only? And this guy's like, and so this guy's looking at a long-term job search and he's like, I'll do something for a few hours a day or a few hours a week. So I just invested in a SaaS company that is selling mostly into call centers and we have 0 sales right now. We have zero sales team and we're trying to figure that out. And this guy in Dallas is like, I absolutely want to go knock on doors in call centers and sell your stuff. And I was like, really? But, you know, salespeople, they think differently, right? You guys think differently. And we need it. The engineers in the world, we need salespeople. Ghostwriting, I had a resume writer pay me $1,000 a month to write on his blog. $1,000. Is that a lot of money? Took me about a half an hour a week to do it. That was good money. It's like drug dealer level money, I think. I've never been a drug dealer, and that's actually not in one of the streams, but it was good money. What if I had 5 more clients where I was just ghostwriting for them? Social marketing, social media marketing, there is crazy money in that. This guy called up Dave Ramsey. I listen to Dave Ramsey a lot, and he called up Dave Ramsey, and he had what was it called? A very expensive car. I can't remember what it was. It was like a $400,000 car, and Dave's like, what? How old are you? 24. Well, how much money do you make? And he said, $324,000. He's like, you make that a year? He said, no, I make that a month. He started a social media marketing company. There are people out there who don't get it, right? I'm not saying that any of these are necessarily easy, but you can learn it. And I'll tell you what, you guys are putting a lot of work learning and thinking about your day jobs. What if you put work into something else that becomes a stream? There's one more that I wanted to put on here, but I came up with it this morning. There's a lady, I wish I remember her last name. I wanted to say it's Hawkins. Anybody heard of the 20-something-year-old girl that started writing little books on Amazon and she sold them for just a few bucks each? She was making $10 million a year. I think her name is Amanda Hawkins, something like that. Look up Amanda Amazon millionaire or author or something like that. It is a fascinating story. My publisher told me, you're not going to make money in book sales. And Amanda proved that wrong. And there are other authors who have proved that wrong. All right, we're getting real close. Are we good, Kathy?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So one of the biggest problems that I've seen new entrepreneurs who provide services is their pricing. And here's the faulty logic. They come at this and say, well, in my old job I made $100,000, and if you divide that by the number of hours, which I round it down to 2,000, but if you're in HR, you know it's 2080. So 100,000 divided by 2,000 hours is 50 bucks an hour. That's how much I made. That's how much I was worth to my last company. That's how they price it. So then they say, okay, here's this new project. It's only a 10-hour project, so I'm going to bill you $500. Oh, thank you. I'm getting some no's on this, and I'm glad. The competitors who are bidding on this are bidding $5,000 and $10,000 because they're bidding not based on what your old company used to pay you and what you think you're worth. They're bidding on what the value is that you're bringing to that organization. So if you do services like consulting, don't think, well, here's how much I used to make, so that's how much I should bill. I hear that way too much and it makes me sick. I hate it. Think about the value that you're providing to the organization. All right, let's wrap this up. So we're going to take concepts from 2.0, right? Branding, networking, growing your network and nurturing relationships, learning new stuff. People say, Jason, how'd you write a book? Well, I didn't know how to write a book before I did it, but I learned. How'd you make your first Pluralsight course? And edit it and video editing, all this stuff. I just kind of Googled it. I learned. When you go into your next job, there's going to be a learning curve, right? Whatever business or income stream you think you want to pursue, there's going to be a learning curve, but do it. A newsletter is a marketing tool, informational interviews, these strategic, regular meetings. These are things that you're going to do in 2.0 for career management and job search, and they're things that you're going to do in 3.0 as you develop your income streams. This is the new job security. This is our new normal. I don't want you to walk out of your job search, you land your job and you're like, thank goodness I never have to network again. That was horrible, right? I have people who come into JibberJobber and say, I landed my dream job, thanks so much, delete my network, delete my account. And 2 months later, they're like, well, something happened. Can I have my network back? No, sorry, you deleted it. Okay, some questions. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Right now. Look, if you're looking at me and you're thinking, man, this would have been great information 20 years ago, first of all, go talk to someone that's younger than you that you know and love and tell them to do this, right? But second, it's not too late for you to start now. Okay? Why don't people create revenue streams? Why don't they do it? What are some reasons? Lazy, fear of failure, fear of success. Well, if it grows too big, then I won't have time to have a job. They're comfortable doing what they're doing.
Schools don't teach that.
Schools don't teach it?
They're not teaching.
No. I actually hired someone out of the entrepreneur program. He was the worst entrepreneur mindset I'd ever had. I'm like, I need an entrepreneur thinker. And I got a bureaucrat.
Or you've done it and you get turned out of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what happened to me last year when I had to go take a job because I needed a change of scenery. I was getting burned out. But you know what? I took that job for 9 months, saw how this massively successful SaaS company was doing and how they did it, and I'm taking that back to the company that I'm investing in now. It's just another revenue stream, right? My point here on this is, yeah, you're going to have reasons and excuses to not do it. Evaluate those. Most of them you can discard. There's a girl who, let me think real quick. There's a couple of teenage entrepreneur examples. I won't tell you about them, but as I started thinking about them, I thought, the best thing you can do as a teenager or a college student if you want to own your own business is to start a business right now. Even if you don't make any money, even if you're not successful, the things you're going to learn about inventory and marketing and sales and customers and all this stuff will help you in your next thing, okay? So I don't want you to think you're going to start. Here's what I don't want. Don't email me in 6 months and say, Jason, I tried this entrepreneur thing and I failed and it was horrible and you suck. Okay? What I would like, though, is something where you think, I tried it and I failed, but I learned, and I'm going to take those learnings to my next thing. The power in diversifying the income is when you're sitting across the table from one person who's taking away that income stream, and you're like, no problem. I have other things going on. Okay. Last thing. How much money can you make writing resumes? Anybody have a guess? In a year. In a year. How much do you think resume writers make? I was at a conference. Thank you. Who said not much? I was at a conference with resume writers, and somebody came up to me and said, we did a survey, and the average person here makes 20-something thousand a year. I'm like, what? Resumes are expensive. Why aren't they making more? Well, they were really good at writing resumes, but they weren't necessarily good at marketing. I know resume writers who are making way north of $100,000. They're excellent at marketing, right? So what I learned from that is maybe you start out doing something and you find out that it's better for you to be the sales and marketing person and outsource the operations of it, right? Don't feel like you have to do everything.